On New Year's Eve, my mother laughed in front of 200 relatives and announced I was still job hunting. The whole room roared, but I just smiled and raised my glass because I knew exactly what was coming. When the big screen suddenly switched channels, CNN called my name for my $20 million startup. I realized then that their cruelty was actually what helped me win. Now they do not just want to apologize, they want a cut. My name is Estelle Kensington, and for the last 3 years, my entire existence in this family has been reduced to a cautionary tale whispered over shrimp cocktails. Standing in the center of the Westin Grand Hall in Pennsylvania, surrounded by 200 of my closest relatives, I felt like a prop in a play I never auditioned for. The hall was suffocatingly opulent, decorated in gold and velvet, smelling of expensive perfume and old money judgment. It was New Year's Eve. The one night a year my mother, Marilyn Kensington, insisted we present a united front, which usually meant her standing on a pedestal while the rest of us prayed we did not get kicked off the ledge. The chandeliers overhead were so bright they made my eyes ache, but I kept my posture rigid. I had practiced this. I had spent years practicing the art of being invisible in plain sight. But tonight was different. Tonight, I was not just attending a party, I was waiting for a fuse to burn down. Marilyn tapped her champagne flute with a silver spoon. The sharp, high-pitched ring cut through the chatter, silencing the room instantly. This was her moment, the annual matriarchal address. She stood on the small raised platform near the DJ booth, looking immaculate in a floor-length emerald gown that cost more than my rent in Port Mason. She smiled, that practiced, tight-lipped smile that never quite reached her eyes, and began her recitation of the family's achievements. She praised my cousin for his engagement. She lauded my sister, Tara, for her promotion at the bank. She even managed to compliment my father, Graham, for simply existing and paying the bills. Then, her gaze landed on me. It was heavy, physical, like a spotlight swinging across a prison yard. "And then there is our dear Estelle," she said, her voice dropping to a register of performative concern that made my stomach turn. "We all know how difficult the city can be. It eats people up." She paused for effect, letting the pity settle over the room like a fog. "But we are so proud of her for keeping her spirits up, even though she is still job hunting." She let out a short, melodic laugh. Again, the room erupted. It was not a polite titter. It was a roar of laughter, a wave of social compliance. They were not just laughing at the joke. They were laughing to show Marilyn they were on her side. 200 people, people whose blood I shared, people I had sent birthday cards to, were cackling at my expense. I did not flinch. I did not cry. I simply tightened my grip on the stem of my wineglass until my knuckles turned white. My face remained a mask of polite indifference, a skill I had honed over a lifetime of being the Kensington disappointment. Aunt Patrice, a woman who wore too much diamond jewelry to compensate for a lack of personality, leaned in from the table next to mine. Her breath smelled of gin and malice. "Well, honey," she said, loud enough for the surrounding tables to hear, "at least you are trying, though being unemployed in a big city at your age, that is just sad. Maybe you should come home and let your father find you something in the mailroom." The humiliation was a physical heat rising up my neck, but I swallowed it down. I stood up slowly, smoothing the fabric of my dress. "Excuse me," I said softly. "I need some air." I walked away from the table, feeling their eyes on my back. I could hear the whispers starting up again, the dissecting of my failure, the rewriting of my history. I walked straight through the heavy oak doors and into the long, carpeted hallway. The silence out here was jarring. The muffled sound of the party continued behind the doors. A dull roar of laughter and clinking glass. I leaned against the cool wall and pulled my phone from my clutch. My hands were trembling, not from sadness, but from adrenaline. The screen lit up with a notification I'd been waiting for all day. It was from my publicist. CNN just confirmed. The segment runs in the next block. They are leading with the valuation numbers. You live at 10. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. 10 minutes. Just 10 minutes until the world knew the truth. I thought back to the meeting with my lead investor 6 months ago. He was a man who did not smile often, and he had looked me dead in the eye across a mahogany table. "Estelle," he had said, "you have something here that is going to change the industry, but families like yours, they do not like it when the black sheep buys the farm. If they find out before the ink is dry on this Series B funding, they will sabotage you, they will want a piece, they will sue. You keep your mouth shut until the money is in the bank and the valuation is public record." I had listened. I had signed the non-disclosure agreements. I had endured the pitying looks, the snide remarks about my gap year, the assumptions that I was living off credit cards and desperation. I had played the role of the failure because it was the only way to protect the $20 million reality I was building in silence. Jade, my best friend, and the only person who knew the truth, had sent a follow-up text. "Do not let them see you sweat. You are the CEO of Larkspur Vale. Act like it." I straightened my spine. I checked my reflection in the hallway mirror. The woman staring back at me did not look like a disappointment. She looked dangerous. I put the phone back in my clutch and turned back toward the double doors. Walking back into that room was the hardest thing I have ever done. I had to force my legs to move. I pushed open the doors and the wall of noise hit me again. Marilyn was still holding the microphone, now recounting some anecdote about a vacation in the Alps that I had not been invited to. I walked to my empty seat. The chair scraped against the floor, a harsh sound that drew a few glances. I sat down. I picked up my wine glass. I looked at the stage. Marilyn caught my eye and smirked. A tiny, victorious twitch of her lips. She thought she had won. She thought she had put me in my place, buried under the weight of her expectations and her public shaming. She had no idea that I was not sitting there taking it. I was sitting there counting down. Behind Marilyn, there was a massive projection screen. It was currently displaying a slideshow of family photos, curated to show everyone at their best, and me usually blinking or looking awkward in the background. It was connected to the main AV system, which was set to switch over to the Times Square countdown in 15 minutes, but my team was better than the hotel AV guy. I checked my watch. 3 minutes. I took a sip of wine. It tasted like vinegar, but I swallowed it anyway. The aunt who had insulted me earlier was now ignoring me, turning her back to talk to my cousin Lindsay. They were probably discussing how long it would be before I asked for a loan. Let them talk, I thought. Let them enjoy this last glimmer of superiority. The music in the hall dipped slightly as the DJ prepared for the countdown set. The slideshow on the screen flickered. A few people looked up, confused. Marilyn turned around, annoyed that her backdrop was malfunctioning. "Someone check the connection," she snapped into the microphone, her voice echoing with irritation. The screen went black for a second. Then, the crisp, familiar red and white logo of CNN cut through the darkness. The audio crackled to life, booming through the high-quality speakers of the Westin Grand Hall, drowning out the murmurs of confusion. The anchor's voice was professional, urgent, and loud. "And now, for our special segment on the innovators reshaping the economy this coming year, we take a look at the unicorn startup that appeared out of nowhere in the Pacific Northwest." Marilyn stood frozen on stage. She looked at the screen, then at the tech crew, motioning for them to cut it, but the feed was locked in. The image on the screen changed. It was a high-definition shot of a sleek, modern office overlooking the water in Port Mason. And walking through the glass doors, looking authoritative and sharp in a tailored suit, was me. A lower third graphic slid across the bottom of the screen in bold red letters. CNN Live Founder. Spotlight. Estelle Kensington. The text below it was even larger. Larkspur Vale valued at $20 million. The silence that fell over the room was absolute. It was heavy and sudden, as if all the oxygen had been sucked out of the grand hall. 200 heads turned. They looked at the screen, where the video version of me was pointing at a whiteboard and commanding a room of engineers. Then, slowly, in a ripple of disbelief, they turned to look at the real me, sitting quietly at table 12 with a half-empty glass of wine. I did not look at them. I looked straight at my mother, Her mouth was slightly open, the microphone dangling limply in her hand. The smugness was gone, replaced by a confusion so profound it looked painful. The anchor's voice continued, oblivious to the destruction it was causing in Pennsylvania. Estelle Kensington, the youngest female founder in the sector, sat down with us to discuss how she built an empire while everyone thought she was unemployed. I smiled. It was the first genuine smile I had worn all night. The show was just beginning. To understand why I sat in that banquet hall like a stone statue while my mother dismantled my dignity, you have to understand the silence of my life in Port Mason, Washington. It is 3,000 miles away from the heavy, suffocating expectations of Pennsylvania, and for the last 18 months, it has been the only place I could breathe. My apartment is not a place of luxury. It is a 400-square-foot studio with concrete floors and a view of the shipping docks. It smells of rain and stale coffee. There is no guest room. There is no velvet furniture. It is a fortress of solitude where I built Larkspur Vale from a laptop and a terrifying amount of caffeine. But to my family, this intentional minimalism was just proof of my destitution. They saw the lack of square footage and assumed a lack of ambition. They did not see that every dollar I saved on rent was a dollar I funneled into back-end development and patent filings. The narrative began the day I resigned from North Pine Strategy Group. It was a prestigious firm, the kind of place that looks good on a Christmas newsletter. When I called my mother to tell her I was leaving to pursue my own venture, there was a long, static-filled pause on the line. "You are quitting," she had said, her voice flat, not a question, a judgment. "I am pivoting," I had corrected her, naive enough back then to think she cared about the nuance. "I have an idea for a platform that integrates AI with supply chain logistics. I have a co-founder. We have interest." "You have delusions," she snapped. "You are leaving a 6-figure salary with benefits to play pretend in an apartment. Do not expect us to bail you out when you are eating instant noodles." From that moment on, the truth did not matter. Marilyn Kensington had her story. In her version of events, I had not launched a high-risk technology startup. I had suffered a mental break and fled to the West Coast to find myself. It was a much more convenient narrative for her. It positioned her as the long-suffering mother of a wayward child. It garnered her sympathy at her bridge club. If I were successful, she would have to treat me as an equal. If I were a failure, she could keep me as a pet project, something broken that only she could love. I tried to correct the record exactly once. It was 3 months after I left North Pine. I was visiting for a weekend, and over dinner, I tried to show my father the beta version of our software. I wanted him to see the code, the structure, the tangible proof of my hard work. Marilyn had reached across the table and physically lowered my hand holding the phone. "Estelle, honey," she had said, her voice dripping with that poisonous sweetness. "Let us not bore your father with your little projects. We are trying to have a nice dinner. Don't make up excuses for your situation. Just live in reality." That was the phrase that locked the door, live in reality. My reality was 18-hour days. My reality was negotiation calls at 3 a.m. with developers in Eastern Europe. My reality was bleeding calm reassurance to my team while I was terrified we would not make payroll. But her reality was that I was still looking for my path. So, I stopped trying to invite them in. There were practical reasons for the silence. 2. When we secured our Series A funding, the terms were strict. My lead investor was a man named Silas, a veteran of the tech world who had seen promising founders destroyed by personal drama. He had sat me down in a glass-walled conference room and slid a thick document across the table. "This is a standard non-disclosure agreement regarding our valuation and upcoming press releases," Silas had said. "But I want to give you some personal advice. Money changes people, especially family. If they find out you are sitting on a potential 8-figure exit, they will not just ask for loans. They will want board seats. They will want you to hire your cousin who failed marketing. They will distract you. And right now, Estelle, you cannot afford a distraction." I signed the papers. It was a relief. Honestly, the NDA gave me a legal shield. I could not tell them, even if I wanted to. but the emotional reason for my silence ran deeper than a contract. I was exhausted. I was tired of handing them pieces of my life, only to have them sneer at the size of the offering. Jade Holloway was the only one who saw the toll it took. Jade and I had been friends since college, and she was the operations lead at Larkspur Vale. She was the one who found me crying in the server room after a particularly brutal phone call with my sister, Tara, who had called just to brag about her new Audi and ask if I was taking the bus. Jade had dragged me out to a dive bar in downtown Port Mason that night. We sat in a booth with peeling vinyl seats, nursing cheap beers. "You know why they do it, right?" Jade had asked, staring at me with her sharp, analytical eyes. "Because I am a disappointment," I said, repeating the script I had been fed. "No," Jade said firmly, "because you are the variable they cannot solve. Your sister, your dad, even that creepy cousin Derek, they all operate within your mother's ecosystem. They need her approval to survive. You left. You are surviving without her permission. They do not hate you because you are failing. Estelle, they hate you because you are uncontrollable. If you succeed without them, it proves that they do not need her either, and that terrifies her." Jade was right. The mockery was a leash. They yanked it every time I came home, trying to choke me back into submission. I thought about the previous holidays, Thanksgiving 2 years ago, when my uncle made a toast to those of us who actually contribute to society, while looking directly at me. Christmas last year, when Marilyn gave me a book titled Resumes for Dummies in front of the entire extended family. I sat there, clutching the book, smiling until my jaw ached, while they laughed. It was always a joke. It was always just teasing. If I got upset, I was too sensitive. If I stayed silent, I would agree with them. That Christmas was the turning point. I had flown back to Port Mason on the red-eye, staring out the window at the dark expanse of the country below. I had $20 in my checking account because I had spent everything on gifts for them, gifts they barely glanced at. I made a vow somewhere over the Midwest. I promised myself that I would never again beg for their respect. I would build something so undeniable, so massive, that it would eclipse their petty little world. And until that thing was built, I would not give them a single inch of truth. I would let them have their failure daughter. I would let them write their plays and assign me the role of the fool, because I knew something they did not. I knew that the failure was building a war chest. When the invitation for the New Year's Eve gala arrived, I almost threw it in the trash. But then the call from CNN came. The timing was cosmic. It was terrifyingly perfect. I realized I had to go. I had to be there. Not to gloat, not to scream, but to let the truth land like a meteor in the center of their carefully constructed delusion. I packed my suitcase with the cheapest clothes I owned. I prepared my face to look tired and defeated. I walked into Weston Grand Hall knowing exactly what they would do. I knew Marilyn would use me as a punchline. I knew they would laugh. Let them laugh. I had thought as I boarded the plane, it would be the last time they ever found my life funny. I was ready to endure one last night of humiliation to buy my freedom. What I did not expect was how much it would hurt to be right about them. I had hoped, some small foolish part of me, that maybe this year they would just let me be. But as the laughter from 200 people washed over me, confirming every cynical suspicion I had ever held, the last thread of attachment snapped. I was not just hiding a company anymore. I was preparing to cut the cord. And as I sat there waiting for the screen to flicker, I thought about my bank account and the thousands of dollars of small favors they had siphoned off me over the years, even while mocking my poverty. That was the other secret I was keeping. The startup was my shield, but the ledger I had compiled was my sword, and I was finally ready to draw blood. The adrenaline from the broadcast had faded into a cold, sharp clarity by the time I got back to my hotel room. The silence was absolute, a stark contrast to the uproar I had left behind in the banquet hall. I did not sleep. I could not sleep. Instead, I sat at the small mahogany desk in the corner of the room, illuminated only by the blue light of my laptop screen. It started with a single vibration of my phone against the hard wood of the desk, a notification from my banking app. Payment authorized, $42.50. Mama's Pizza Grill, Weston, PA. I stared at the screen. It was 2 in the morning. I was in the hotel room. I had not ordered pizza, but someone had. Someone in Weston had used the card, ending in 4190, to order a late-night snack, presumably to comfort themselves after the shock of the evening. For years, I had ignored these notifications. I had filed them away under the mental category of keeping the peace. It was easier to pay for the family Spotify plan than to ask my sister to Venmo me for $15. It was easier to let my dad keep my credit card on his Uber account for emergencies than to argue about boundaries. But tonight, that notification felt like a slap in the face. They had laughed at me for being unemployed, for being poor, yet they were eating pizza on my dime. I opened the banking portal. Then I opened Excel. I decided to treat this not as a daughter looking at her expenses, but as a CEO conducting a forensic audit of a failing subsidiary. I pulled 5 years of statements. I exported every transaction from 3 different credit cards and my primary checking account. I created pivot tables. I categorized expenses. I color-coded the beneficiaries. The first hour was just data entry. It was mechanical, rhythmic, and soothing. I filtered by recurring subscriptions. There it was, the family plan for streaming services, premium tier, naturally. Because Tara needed the 4K resolution, that was $23 a month, over 5 years. That was $1,380. I kept digging. I found the phone bill. When I was 22, my mother had said it would be simpler if we stayed on a family bundle. But somehow, the autopay had migrated to my card 3 years ago. She had promised to send me checks. I searched my deposit history. There were exactly 2 checks from Marilyn Kensington in 3 years. The total cost of subsidizing their data usage, $4,500. Then came the one-offs that were never one-offs. Amazon purchases. I filtered by shipping address. I saw boxes of vitamins sent to my father, high-end skincare sent to my sister Lindsay, a set of golf clubs sent to the house in Weston 2 summers ago. I remembered that summer. I had been eating rice and beans to fund the initial server costs for Larkspur Vale, and my father had called to tell me I sounded tired and poor. He had been swinging a driver I paid for while he said it. I found charges from Derek, my cousin. I did not even know he had my card information. Then I remembered a panic call 2 years ago where he was stranded at a gas station and needed a fill-up. I had read him the numbers over the phone. Apparently, he had saved the card to his digital wallet. I saw gas station charges, convenience store snacks, and a recurring subscription to an online gaming platform. I typed in the numbers. I dragged the formulas down the columns. The sum at the bottom of the spreadsheet blinked at me, a stark, black number in a sea of white cells. $52,481.16. I sat back in the stiff hotel chair, the breath leaving my lungs in a hiss. $52,000. That was not helping out. That was a salary. That was a down payment on a house. That was the seed capital I had desperately needed in the early days. The money I had begged banks for while my family was quietly bleeding me dry. The realization hit me harder than the laughter in the hall. This was not just financial abuse, it was a power play. By taking my money while calling me a failure, Marilyn had constructed the perfect trap. If I had money to give, why was I struggling? And if I was struggling, why did I never ask for the money back? She relied on my shame. She knew I would be too embarrassed by my alleged poverty to pinch pennies. She knew I wanted to prove I was capable, so I paid the bills to show I could. She had monetized my insecurity. I looked at the pizza charge again. It was still pending. I picked up my phone and called Jade. She answered on the first ring, despite the time difference. "Did you kill them?" Jade asked. "Please tell me you did not kill them. We have a press tour next week." "I did not kill them," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I am auditing them." I told her the number. 52 grand, Jade whispered. "Estelle, that is grand larceny." "It is the cost of admission," I said. I paid $50,000 to be the family doormat, but the subscription has expired. What are you going to do? Jade asked. Are you going to send them an invoice? They will just gaslight you. They will say you offered. They will say family helps family. I know, I said. That is why I am not sending an invoice. I am not saying a word. I hung up and turned back to the screen. The investigative phase was over. The execution phase began. I did not write a long, emotional Facebook post. I did not send a scathing text to the group chat. I simply opened the browser tabs. First, the streaming services. I went to the account settings. Cancel subscription. A pop-up asked if I was sure. I clicked yes. Another pop-up offered me a discount to stay. I clicked cancel. Next, the phone carrier. This was trickier. I logged in as the administrator. I selected my line and separated it into a new individual account. Then, I looked at the remaining 4 lines. I went to the billing settings. Remove autopay. Remove saved payment method. I did not cancel their service. That would be petty. I simply removed my credit card. The next time the bill came due in 12 days, the charge would bounce. They would get a text message from Verizon, not me. I went to Amazon. I went to Uber. I went to the food delivery apps. I changed the passwords first, logging out all active sessions on all devices. That meant right now, on Lindsay's phone and my dad's iPad, the apps were prompting them to sign in. When they tried the old password, it would fail. Finally, I logged into my bank. I reported the card ending in 4190 as compromised. It was not a lie. It had been compromised by my inability to say no. The bank would issue a new number immediately and decline any further pending charges. That $42 pizza order transaction declined. I worked through the list with the efficiency of a surgeon. There was no anger in my movements, only a cold, mechanical precision. Click, delete, confirm, click, delete, confirm. It took me 45 minutes to dismantle 5 years of financial parasitism. When I was done, I closed the laptop. The room felt different. The air felt thinner, easier to breathe. I walked to the window and looked out at the dark Pennsylvania sky. For the first time in my life, I did not feel the heavy, dragging weight of guilt. I had always thought that cutting them off would feel like an amputation, like I was losing a part of myself. But as my email inbox began to ping with the confirmation messages, your subscription has been canceled, payment method removed, password changed successfully, I realized it did not feel like losing a limb. It felt like taking off a backpack filled with lead bricks that I had been carrying since I was 16 years old. I checked my phone one last time. A text from Jade popped up. Don't explain. People who want to understand will ask. People who want to use you will demand an explanation to argue with. Give them nothing. I cleared the notification. I turned off my phone. I crawled into the hotel bed, and for the first time in years, I fell asleep without wondering if I had done enough to make them love me. I had done enough. I had paid $52,481.16 for their love, and tonight, I decided the product was defective, and I was no longer buying. The sun had barely risen over the Philadelphia skyline when the first assault wave hit my phone. I had slept for 4 hours, a dreamless, exhausted sleep, but my waking world was immediately loud. It was not the sound of congratulations. It was not my family calling to say they were proud of the $20 million valuation they had seen broadcast on national television. It was the shrill, demanding ringtone I had assigned to my mother years ago. I stared at the screen. Marilyn Mobile. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. 3 seconds later, it rang again. I picked up the phone, swiping the green button, but I did not say hello. I just held the device to my ear, waiting. Why was the card declined? Her voice was sharp, tight with a mixture of confusion and righteous indignation. There was no mention of the CNN segment, no mention of the fact that her unemployed daughter was the CEO of the year's hottest startup. There was only the accusation that I had failed in my duty as the family wallet. "Good morning to you too, Mother," I said, my voice thick with sleep but steady. "Do not play games with me. Estelle," she snapped. "I am at the pharmacy. I am trying to pick up your father's prescription, and the card, the one ending in 4190, is coming up as invalid. The pharmacist is looking at me like I am a criminal. Fix it. I cannot fix it, I said. I reported it lost. Lost? You are holding up the line. Just give me the new number. No. The silence on the other end was heavy. It lasted for 5 full seconds. Excuse me, she whispered, the danger in her voice ratcheting up. I said no. I repeated. I am not giving you the new number. I canceled the subscriptions. Mom, all of them. The streaming, the phone plan, the delivery apps. It is all done. Have you lost your mind? She hissed. You are embarrassing me. You are abandoning your family because of a little temper tantrum over a joke. Is that what this is? You are punishing us because we have a sense of humor. I am not punishing you, I said, sitting up in bed and swinging my legs over the side. I am just living in reality. Isn't that what you told me to do? She hung up. She did not say goodbye. She just severed the connection with the violence of a slammed door. 10 minutes later, the second wave hit. My father, Graham, left a voicemail. I did not answer his call, but I listened to the recording. His voice was booming, echoing as if he was pacing the living room. Estelle, the television is not working. It says, subscription inactive, right in the middle of the pre-game show. Your mother says you did something to the accounts. You need to grow up and turn it back on. I do not know what kind of power trip you are on, but you are disrupting this household. Call me back when you are ready to apologize. I deleted the voicemail. I did not feel the usual pang of guilt. I felt a strange, scientific curiosity. They were reacting exactly as a parasite does when the host body develops an immune system. They were not concerned with the host. They were panicked about the food source. Then came the sisters, Tara and Lindsay. Tara's texts were long blocks of gray bubbles, filled with pseudo-psychological babble. I know you are hurting, Estelle, but lashing out financially is a sign of deep insecurity. You are projecting your trauma onto mom and dad. You have changed. Money has already changed you, and it has not even been 24 hours. Lindsay was less subtle. She sent a picture of herself crying, followed by, I can't believe you cut off my Spotify. I have all my playlists on there. Why are you being so mean? I did not reply to any of them. I placed the phone on the hotel desk and opened my laptop. I knew the private text messages were just the opening skirmish. The real war would happen where they could perform for an audience. I logged into Facebook. I had not posted anything, but my notifications were glowing red with 99+ alerts. Marilyn had not posted directly. She was too smart for that. She preferred to operate in the shadows of implication, but Aunt Patrice had posted, and my cousin Derek had posted. And then I saw it, the post that was already garnering hundreds of reactions from the extended family network in Weston. It was from Marilyn's personal account, but it was not a status update. It was a shared image, a stark black background with white serif text, the kind used for announcing deaths or national tragedies. It read, "It is a heartbreaking day when you realize that for some people, blood is thinner than water, and family is less important than a bank balance. Praying for those who cut off their own blood for money. Sad. There was no name. There didn't need to be. The comment section was a feeding frenzy. So sorry you are going through this. Marilyn." One neighbor wrote, "Some kids just take and then leave. Ungrateful." Another relative commented, "After everything you sacrificed for her, money reveals character." My cousin Derek wrote, "Stay strong. Aunt Marilyn." They were rewriting the narrative in real time. The story of Estelle the CEO was being buried under the avalanche of Estelle the ungrateful daughter. They were not addressing the fact that I was successful. They were framing my success as the reason for my cruelty. They were making themselves the victims of my wealth before I had even spent a dime of it. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. This was gaslighting on an industrial scale. If I stayed silent, this would become the truth. In 5 years, no one would remember the CNN segment. They would only remember that I was the cold-hearted daughter who abandoned her aging parents the moment she got a check. I started taking screenshots. I captured everything. The timestamp of Marilyn's post, the comments from Derek, The text messages from Tara accusing me of being mentally unstable. The voicemail transcript from my father complaining about his TV service while ignoring my career milestone. I saved them all into a folder named Evidence. Then, a message popped up in my direct inbox from a cousin I barely spoke to. A woman named Sarah who lived 2 towns over. "Hey Estelle," Sarah wrote, "I saw your mom's post. Is everything okay? Why did you cut them off? Aunt Marilyn is telling everyone you left them with nothing and canceled their insurance. That seems really intense." That was the spark. They were lying about the scope. I had canceled Netflix and Uber Eats. They were telling people I had canceled their health insurance. I realized I could not just stay silent. Silence was being weaponized against me. But I also knew I could not argue with them in the Facebook comments section. That was what they wanted. They wanted a public brawl to prove I was unstable. I opened my email client. I composed a new message. In the recipient field, I added Marilyn, Graham, Tara, Lindsay, and Derek. I BCC'd Sarah, just so there was a witness outside the immediate blast radius. Subject clarification regarding household expenses. I did not write a long, emotional paragraph. I did not ask them why they hated me. I did not defend my character. I simply wrote, "I am attaching a summary of all expenses covered by my personal accounts over the last 60 months. This includes the dates, the amounts, and the beneficiaries of each transaction. Please review this so we are all operating from the same set of facts regarding who has been supporting whom." I attached the spreadsheet I had created the night before. The one with the $52,000 total in bold red at the bottom. I hit send. My heart was hammering against my ribs. Not from fear, but from the sheer finality of the act. I had just dropped a tactical nuke into the family group chat. I waited. The response time was faster than I expected. 3 minutes later, a notification popped up. It was an email from Marilyn. I opened it, expecting a rebuttal, expecting her to challenge the numbers, expecting her to say that the spreadsheet was wrong, or that I had forgotten to include the cost of raising me. But Marilyn did not care about facts. Marilyn cared about control. Her email was one long, unformatted block of text. "Estelle," she wrote, "I am actually vomiting reading this. You kept a ledger. You tracked every slice of pizza and every movie rental like a loan shark. This is sick. This is truly sick behavior. We are your family. We raised you. We fed you. And you are throwing a spreadsheet in our faces. You think because you have some money now you can buy the moral high ground. You cannot put a price on love. Estelle, but apparently, you have tried. Do not contact us until you are ready to beg for forgiveness for this insult." I stared at the screen, blinking. She had pivoted so fast, I almost admired the athleticism of it. Confronted with hard data that she had been mopping up my money for years, she had turned the act of tracking the money into a sin. The theft wasn't the problem. The accounting was the problem. I went to reply. I wanted to type. I didn't put a price on love. I put a price on exploitation. But when I hit reply, the email bounced back immediately. Delivery status. Notification failure. Address not found. Your message to Marilyn. Kensington could not be delivered. I checked my phone. I tried to view her Facebook profile. Content not available. I checked Instagram. User not found. I sat back in my chair and let out a short, incredulous laugh. She had blocked me. Marilyn Kensington, the woman who had just publicly shamed me for being unemployed, the woman who had spent $50,000 of my money on luxuries she pretended to despise, had blocked me. She had cut off the line of communication so she could have the last word. She had walled herself off in a reality where she was the martyr and I was the monster. And she had made sure I could not reach through the wall to correct her. It was masterfully done. She had stolen the exit, but as I looked at the bounced email notification, I realized she had made a critical tactical error. By blocking me, she thought she was punishing me. She thought she was depriving me of her presence. She did not realize she had just given me exactly what I wanted. She had given it to me in writing. She had given me the silence I had been too afraid to take for myself. I closed the laptop. The hotel room was quiet. The war was raging online, but for the first time in my life, the general was not in my ear telling me I was losing. I was alone, and I was free. To understand the sheer magnitude of the restraint I exercised in that banquet hall on New Year's Eve, you have to rewind the tape. You have to go back to a gray, freezing afternoon 3 days before the party. This was the moment the Cold War turned hot. This was the moment the invasion began. It was December 28th. I was in my apartment in Port Mason, surrounded by whiteboards covered in launch strategies for the upcoming quarter. The silence of my workspace was sacred to me, a bubble of productivity I had fought hard to protect. And then, the buzzer rang. It was not the polite, hesitant buzz of a delivery driver. It was a sustained, aggressive drone that vibrated through the cheap plastic speaker on my wall. I checked the monitor. My stomach dropped through the floor. Standing in the vestibule of my building, 3,000 miles away from where they were supposed to be in Pennsylvania, were my parents, Marilyn and Graham, and lurking behind them, wearing a leather jacket that was too tight and a smirk that was too loose, was my cousin Derek Voss. They were holding brightly colored gift bags. They looked like a holiday commercial. They looked like a loving family coming to surprise their daughter, but I knew better. They were not here to give. They were here to collect. I did not buzz them in. I assumed they would leave. But 10 minutes later, there was a heavy pounding on my actual apartment door. Someone had let them in. I walked to the door, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I looked through the peephole. The fisheye lens distorted their faces, making them look grotesque. Marilyn was fixing her hair. Graham was checking his watch. Derek was leaning against the doorframe, chewing gum with his mouth open. "Estelle," Marilyn called out. Her voice was muffled by the wood, but it still carried that distinct tone of performative cheerfulness. "Open up, sweetie. We have presents." I leaned my forehead against the cool metal of the door. I did not unlock it. "Go away," I said, my voice shaking slightly before I steadied it. "I did not invite you." "Do not be silly," Marilyn laughed, a sound that grated on my nerves. "We are family. We flew all the way here to surprise you. Now open the door. The neighbors are going to hear." "The neighbors can hear whatever they want," I said, speaking louder now. "I told you last week, I am not coming home for the holidays, and I am not hosting. Please leave." The silence on the other side was brief, but the shift in atmospheric pressure was palpable. The nice mommy mask fell off with an audible thud. "Open this door right now, Estelle," Marilyn snapped, her voice dropping an octave, losing all its sugar. "You are being ridiculous. This city has ruined you. You think you are too good for us. You think you can just hide in there and ignore your obligations. You are acting like a petulant child." "I am acting like an adult with a lease," I shot back. "And this is my home. You are trespassing." "Trespassing?" Graham's voice joined the fray, deep and booming. "We are your parents. For God's sake, we pay for your phone plan. We pay for your streaming services. You do not get to talk about trespassing when you are living on our charity. Open the door. We are taking you home for the new year. We are ending this little charade." I flinched. The mention of the money stung, even though I knew I was about to sever those ties. But his demand to take me home sounded less like an invitation and more like an arrest. "I am not going anywhere with you," I said. "Marilyn, Graham, Derek, leave, or I'm calling the police." "You would not dare." Derek spoke up for the first time. His voice was oily, sliding through the wood. "Imagine what that would look like on Facebook. 'Cause daughter arrests parents trying to give her Christmas gifts. You would be the villain of the year." He kicked the bottom of the door, a sharp, violent thud that made me jump back. "Open it," Derek commanded. I did not reach for the lock. I reached for the intercom panel and pressed the emergency button that connected directly to the building's security desk. "This is Unit 4B, I said, my voice loud and clear. "I have 3 intruders outside my door refusing to leave. They are becoming aggressive. Please send assistance." "Copy that. 4B, the guard replied. "We are on our way." Outside the door, the dynamic shifted instantly. "She called security," Graham hissed. "Unbelievable. She actually called security on us." "Estelle," Marilyn shrieked, no longer caring about the volume. You are making a scene. You are humiliating us." The door across the hall opened. Mr. Henderson, a retired architect who usually kept to himself, stepped out in his slippers. He held up his phone. The camera lens pointed squarely at my parents. "I am recording this," Mr. Henderson announced, his voice dry and bored. "If you kick that door again, young man, I will have the footage sent to the precinct before you can get to the elevator." Marilyn put a hand over her face, turning away from the camera. Graham looked like he wanted to punch Mr. Henderson, but thought better of it. Derek just glared at the lens, giving it the middle finger. The elevator chimed at the end of the hall. 2 uniformed security guards stepped out, looking less than amused. I watched through the peephole as the confrontation unfolded. It was pathetic. My mother tried to charm the guards, flashing a smile that faltered when one of them pointed towards the exit. My father tried to bluster, talking about how he was a respectable man, but the guard simply took out a notepad. "We are issuing a trespass warning," the guard said. "If you return to this property, you will be arrested. Do you understand?" They were escorted away like common criminals. I watched their backs retreat down the hallway, the brightly colored gift bags swinging mockingly at their sides. But just before the elevator doors closed, Derek stepped back. He broke away from the guard for a split second and walked right up to my door. He pressed his face close to the peephole. I could see the pores on his nose, the redness in his eyes. "You think you are safe in there," he whispered, his voice low enough that the guards couldn't hear, but loud enough to freeze the blood in my veins. "You think I do not know what you are doing. I saw the deck. Startup girl, I know exactly what you are hiding." Then he pulled back, winked, and turned to join my parents in the elevator. The doors slid shut. The hallway was empty. I sank to the floor, my back sliding down the door until I hit the cold concrete. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely unclench my fists. They didn't just want me to come home. Derek knew. He knew about the startup. He knew about the pitch deck, the secrecy I had sacrificed everything for the NDA, the silence. The carefully constructed lie of my unemployment had been breached, and if Derek knew, it was only a matter of time before he figured out how to use it against me. The clock was ticking faster than I thought. The chill that Derek's words left in my veins had nothing to do with the winter wind in the hallway and everything to do with the specific precision of his insult. "Startup girl?" He had not called me a dreamer. He had not called me a liar. He had used the exact terminology that defined my secret life. I locked the door, engaged the deadbolt, and immediately called Jade. "We have a breach," I said, my voice tight. "Derek knows. He knows about the deck. He knows about the valuation. He knows I am not unemployed." "Impossible," Jade replied, the clicking of her keyboard already audible in the background. "The data room is locked down tighter than the Pentagon. We have 2-factor authentication on everything. Did you tell anyone? A drunk dial a slip-up." "Never," I said. "I have played the role of the destitute daughter perfectly. I have not even bought a new coat in 2 years." "Then how?" Jade asked. "Is he guessing?" He did not sound like he was guessing. He sounded like he had read the executive summary. We spent the next 6 hours tearing apart our digital security. We audited every employee at Larkspur Vale. We checked the access logs for the investor portal. Nothing. The silence from the data was deafening. If the leak had not come from the company, it had to have come from me. I paced the small confines of my apartment, retracing my steps over the last 24 months. Where had I been vulnerable? When had I let my guard down? Then, it hit me. A memory from 14 months ago. I had been visiting the house in Weston for a mandatory family weekend. It was late, everyone was asleep, and I had received an urgent email from a potential angel investor requesting a hard copy of our preliminary pitch deck. I did not have my laptop. I had used the old family desktop in the den, the slow virus-ridden machine my father used for solitaire. I had logged into my personal email, downloaded the PDF, printed it on the dusty inkjet printer, and then, had I logged out? I grabbed my laptop and logged into my Google account settings. I navigated to the security tab and pulled up the device activity history. I scrolled back, past my phone, past my work computer, past the iPad I used for testing, and there it was. Device iPad Air 2nd Gen, location Weston, PA, last synced yesterday. I felt the blood drain from my face. I had given that iPad to my mother 3 years ago to use for recipes. I had wiped it, or so I thought. But evidently, my primary email account had remained signed in on the background mail app, quietly syncing every single message I sent or received for the last 3 years. I clicked on the activity details. The account had been accessed heavily in the last 3 weeks. Specifically, someone had searched for keywords bank, contract, valuation, equity. I found it, I whispered to Jade, who was still on the line. They have been reading my emails. They have been reading everything. Who? Jade asked. Marilyn can barely turn on a microwave. Not Marilyn, I said, staring at the screen. Lindsay, my younger sister, the one who always complained about being broke but somehow always had the newest iPhone. The one who spent hours scrolling through Instagram on that iPad in the kitchen while ignoring everyone else. I could see the digital trail clearly now. Lindsay had stumbled upon it. Maybe she was looking for a receipt or a gossip email. But she found the thread with the subject line Series A term sheet. She had opened it. She had read the numbers. She saw the millions of dollars attached to my name, the name of the sister she mocked for being a failure. But Lindsay was not a strategist. She was a gossip. She would not know how to monetize that information on her own. She would tell someone who did. She told Derek. It made perfect sense. Derek was the family hustler. He was always involved in some investment opportunity that ended with him borrowing money from my grandmother. He was currently deep in debt from an online sports betting addiction, a secret everyone knew but nobody discussed. Lindsay must have shown him the emails, thinking it was just juicy drama. Derek saw it as a winning lottery ticket he did not have to buy. The Whisper campaign started 48 hours after the incident at my door. It was subtle at first. I received a text from an aunt in Florida who never spoke to me. Hearing great things about your business ventures. We should catch up. Then a cousin from Ohio. Is it true you are sitting on 8 figures? Grandma needs a new roof? You know. They were not asking if it was true. They were stating it. Derek had not just told them. He had spun a narrative. He was telling the family that I had been hiding a fortune while watching them struggle. He was painting me not as a hardworking entrepreneur, but as a miserly dragon hoarding gold while the villagers starved. Marilyn's tactics shifted overnight. The voicemail I received the next morning was not the screeching demand of a mother scorned. It was the icy, terrifying calm of a woman who believes she has been defrauded. Estelle, she said in the recording, I have been speaking with Derek. It seems there is a lot you have not been honest about. We are not angry that you are successful. We are hurt that you betrayed the family trust. You used our resources, our home, our support to build this thing, and now you think you can cut us out. We need to talk about what is fair. We need to talk about restitution. Restitution. The word hung in the air like a threat. I did not call her back. I called a lawyer. His name was Elias Thorne, a specialist in corporate litigation and reputational defense. He met me in a coffee shop in downtown Port Mason because I was too paranoid to let anyone else into my apartment. I slid the folder across the table. It contained the access logs from the iPad, the screenshots of the text messages, and the timeline of the harassment. This is unauthorized access to a computer system, Elias said, adjusting his glasses. Technically, it is a federal crime, although prosecutors rarely go after family members for reading an open email app. However, the intent to extort is clear. They are spreading lies, I said. They are saying I stole from them to build the company. They are saying I promised them equity. That is defamation, Elias nodded. But defamation is a slow process. We need to stop the bleeding now. We need to issue a cease and desist regarding the dissemination of proprietary business information. If Derek or Lindsay shares that pitch deck with a competitor or posts it online, they are liable for damages they cannot afford. Do it, I said. Draft the letters. Send them to everyone. Derek, Lindsay, Marilyn, Graham, I want them to know that if they mention Larkspur Vale again, it will cost them more than they have." Elias took notes, his pen scratching aggressively against the paper. Then he paused. He looked at his tablet, where he had been running a background check on the names I provided. "Estelle," he said, his voice dropping, "there is something else." "What?" "My firm monitors legal chatter and pre-filing databases," Elias said. "I ran a search on your company name to see if there were any existing liens. There are none. But there is a query from a law firm in Philadelphia, a firm that specializes in familial estate disputes." My stomach tightened. "What does that mean?" "It means—" Elias looked me dead in the eye. "They are not just gossiping. Estelle, they are not just trying to guilt-trip you into buying them a car. They have consulted counsel." "On what grounds?" I asked, my voice rising. "I built this company alone. They contributed nothing. I paid them money. They are preparing an argument for constructive trust, or familial partnership," Elias explained. "They are going to claim that because you lived in their house during the early incubation period, those weekends you visited, the time you used their computer, the fact that they supported you while you were unemployed, that they are entitled to a percentage of the founding equity. They are going to argue that your unemployment was actually a subsidized development period funded by the Kensington family." I sat back, stunned. The audacity was breathtaking. They had mocked me for being jobless. They had laughed at me for being a failure. And now, they were going to use that very same failure to claim they were my angel investors. "They want to sue me for the company," I whispered. "No," Elias said grimly. "They want to scare you into a settlement before the CNN segment airs. They want to approach your partners and threaten a lawsuit to freeze your funding. They know they cannot win in court, but they know they can destroy your reputation with your board." The twist was so sharp it felt like a physical blow. I thought I was dealing with a toxic family drama. I was wrong. I was dealing with a hostile takeover attempt, launched from my childhood living room. "What do we do?" I asked. Elias closed his folder. "We go on the offensive. We do not just defend. We prove that their investment was actually a debt they owe you. And we make sure that when they try to reach for your company, they lose their hands." I looked out the window at the rainy street. I had been worried about them ruining my New Year's Eve. Now I realized they were trying to ruin my life's work. The sadness I had felt about losing my family vanished, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. They wanted a business fight, fine. I was the CEO, and I was done playing the daughter. The attack on my credibility arrived at 9 a.m. on December 30th, less than 36 hours before the ball was scheduled to drop. It did not come in the form of a screaming voicemail or a passive-aggressive Facebook tag. It came as a priority-flagged email forwarded to me by the lead producer of the CNN segment. The subject line was simple, urgent credibility concerns. Regarding Larkspur Vale feature. I opened the thread. The original email had been sent from an anonymous Proton Mail account, but the syntax was unmistakably familiar. It was a chaotic mix of legal buzzwords and personal grievances. To whom it may concern. The email read, "We are writing to inform you that the subject of your upcoming Founder Spotlight, Estelle Kensington, is currently under investigation for familial fraud and misrepresentation of assets. Ms. Kensington has been unemployed for 3 years and is currently relying on family charity to sustain her lifestyle. Her startup is a shell company designed to solicit loans from elderly relatives. Airing this segment would be a liability to your network." Jade was pacing behind me, reading over my shoulder. "This is bad. Estelle, this is really bad. Networks hate liability. If they think you are a fraud, they will pull the segment. They will scrub you from the schedule to be safe." "They will not pull it," I said, my voice steady despite the rapid beating of my heart. "This email is desperate. Look at the phrasing. Family charity. Elderly relatives." "This isn't a whistleblower. It is a tantrum." "It does not matter if it is a tantrum if it works," Jade countered. "Derek is trying to kill the launch. Let him try," I said. "He just made a fatal error." He put his extortion in writing and sent it to a major news organization. I picked up my phone and dialed Silas, my lead investor. I did not wait for his assistant to screen the call. "Silas," I said the moment he picked up, "you are going to get a call from the network legal team. My family is attempting to sabotage the reveal." "I already have the email." "Estelle," Silas said. His voice was unreadably calm. "I am looking at it right now. Shell Company, Creative." "I am coming to your office," I said. "I have the dossier." 30 minutes later, I walked into the boardroom of Silas's venture capital firm. I did not look like a scrappy founder hoping for a break. I looked like a prosecutor. I placed a thick black binder on the glass table. "This," I said, opening the binder, "is the timeline of harassment. Here are the logs showing my sister illegally accessing my email to steal proprietary data. Here is the police report from 2 days ago when my cousin Derek threatened me at my door. And here is a breakdown of the $50,000 I have given them over the last 5 years, money they are now claiming I stole." Silas flipped through the pages. He stopped at the police report. He looked at the transcript of Derek's threat. "You think I do not know what you are doing. They are trying to shake you down." Silas concluded, closing the binder. "They are trying to control the narrative," I corrected. "They know that once the valuation is public, they lose their leverage. They want to blow up the launch, so I stay the failed daughter who needs them." Silas leaned back in his chair. He looked at me with a new kind of respect. "Most founders would be falling apart right now. You have itemized your trauma." "I treat them like any other hostile competitor," I said. "They are just undercapitalized and overconfident." "Good," Silas said. "I will handle the network. I will verify our due diligence. The segment runs, but you need to shut them down. Estelle, legally." I left the office and called Elias. "Send the letters." "To whom?" Elias asked. "Derek Voss and Lindsay Kensington. Cease and desist, defamation of character, tortious interference with business relations, and attach the police report to Derek's letter. Remind him that violation of a no-contact order is an arrestable offense." "And Marilyn?" "Not yet," I said. "Marilyn is the general. You do not shoot the general first. You take out her lieutenants." By noon, the courier had delivered the letters. The reaction was instantaneous. Marilyn did not attack me privately this time. She went nuclear on the public stage. A notification popped up on my phone. Aunt Patrice had shared a post from Marilyn. It was a photo of Marilyn crying, actually crying, with running mascara holding a piece of paper that looked like a legal document. The caption read, "I tried to protect her. I tried to love her. And this is how she repays me. My own daughter is suing her brother and sister. She is threatening to put family in jail because she has lost her way. Please pray for our family. We are under attack." The comments section was a bloodbath. Relatives I hadn't seen since I was 10 were piling on. Disgusting. One wrote, "Money is the root of all evil." "How could she do this to Lindsay?" Another asked. "Lindsay is just a baby." Jade looked at the feed, horrified. "They are destroying you. Estelle, you have to say something. You have to post the truth." "No," I said. "If I post, I look defensive. I look like I am fighting in the mud with them." "So you just let them lie?" "No," I said. "I aim for the undecided voters." I scrolled through the list of people who had liked Marilyn's post. There were the usual sycophants, but there were also people who had stayed silent. Aunt Sarah, Cousin Mike, people who were generally decent but easily swayed by Marilyn's theatrics. I opened a direct message to Aunt Sarah. I did not write a paragraph. I attached a single video file. It was from New Year's Eve, 3 years ago. I had been recording the toast on my phone, intending to capture a happy memory. Instead, the video captured Marilyn standing over me while I sat in a folding chair in the corner. In the video, Marilyn is laughing, a glass of wine in her hand. "Oh, Estelle, don't worry about the gift exchange," she says, loud enough for the whole room to hear. "We know you are between successes. Maybe next year you can afford to buy a personality." The camera shakes as I lower it. but the audio captures the room laughing. It captures Derek saying, or a husband. It captures the sheer, casual cruelty of the moment. I sent the video with a simple caption, "This is what she is protecting me from." "See you tomorrow night." I sent it to Sarah. I sent it to Mike. I sent it to 5 other neutral relatives. 10 minutes later, the notifications on Marilyn's post slowed down. Then, a text from Aunt Sarah appeared on my screen. "I forgot she said that to you. That was the year you helped clean up the kitchen alone, wasn't it?" I didn't reply. I didn't have to. The seed of doubt had been planted. Marilyn was playing the saint, but I had just reminded the jury that she had a history of being the sinner. Then, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, thinking it was another hate text, but the preview caught my eye. "Hey Estelle, it's Toby, Aunt Carol's son. Toby, the quiet kid who worked in AV production. He was the one usually stuck running the slideshows at the family gatherings. I shouldn't be telling you this," Toby wrote. "But I saw the file Derek gave me for the projection system tomorrow night. He told me it was a tribute to you, but I looked at it. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. What is it, Toby?" "It is a montage of your failures," Toby replied. "Photos of you looking bad. Screenshots of your rejection letters from 3 years ago that Lindsay found, and a video of you crying at Grandma's funeral. They are planning to run it on the big screen right before the countdown. They want to humiliate you so bad you leave before midnight." I stared at the phone. The cruelty was breathtaking. They weren't just going to shame me. They were planning a public execution of my character. They wanted to break me in front of 200 people, so that when I finally crumbled, they could say, "See, she is unstable." A cold smile touched my lips. "Don't delete it. Toby," I typed back. "Keep it in the queue. Just let me send you a different file to play right after it." "What file?" Toby asked. "The truth," I replied. "They were planning an ambush." Perfect. They were setting the stage, dimming the lights, and gathering the audience. They thought they were preparing for my destruction. They had no idea they were setting up my premiere. Most people would have canceled the flight. Most people, facing a coordinated campaign of digital harassment and a literal conspiracy to humiliate them in front of 200 relatives, would have stayed in the safety of their locked apartment 3,000 miles away. But I was not most people. I was a CEO who had just successfully navigated a Series B funding round while my own family tried to pick my pockets. Staying home would have been safe, but it also would have been a surrender. It would have confirmed their narrative that I was weak, unstable, and hiding. I decided to go back, but I was not going back as Estelle the daughter. I was going back as Estelle the asset. The preparation for this trip felt less like packing for a holiday and more like equipping a soldier for a Black Ops mission. The first change was logistical. In previous years, I would have flown into the budget airport an hour away to save $50, and I would have waited on the curb for my father to pick me up, enduring his lectures about gas prices the entire ride home. I would have slept in my childhood bedroom, staring at the peeling wallpaper and feeling 12 years old again. Not this time. I booked a suite at the Ritzier Hotel in downtown Philadelphia, 40 minutes from the Westin Grand Hall. I hired a private car service to be on standby for the entire evening. The driver, a stoic man named Arthur, was instructed to wait with the engine running from the moment I stepped into the venue. My exit strategy was not a vague hope. It was a paid contract. Jade was my command center. We established a protocol. She would be monitoring the social media fallout in real time from Port Mason. "If they try to corner you," Jade said over the phone as I packed, "you text me the word red. I will call the venue management and claim there is a security threat regarding the guest list. I will pull the fire alarm remotely if I have to. Do not test me." "Let us hope it does not come to that," I said. "I want to win on the merits, Jade, not by burning the building down." "We are also coordinating with the network," Jade added. "I spoke to the senior producer. The segment is locked. It is pure business, zero fluff, no human interest sob stories about your background. Just the hard numbers, the user base growth, the proprietary algorithm, and the $20 million valuation. It paints you as a self-made titan. It effectively erases your family from your success story without even mentioning their names. Perfect, I said. Silence is the loudest insult. The next step was the wardrobe. This was a critical strategic decision. The temptation to wear something flashy, something that screamed money, was strong. I could have rented a designer gown covered in sequins, something that would catch the light and force them to look at me. But that was what the old Estelle would have done, tried to prove she belonged. Instead, I chose a slate gray silk jumpsuit. It was tailored to within an inch of its life, sharp, architectural, and devastatingly simple. It did not scream for attention. It commanded it. It was the kind of outfit you wear to ring the opening bell at the stock exchange, not a prom dress for a family reunion. I wanted them to look at me and see a stranger. I wanted them to realize that the girl who used to wear hand-me-downs was gone, replaced by a woman who signed checks larger than their mortgages. Before I zipped up my suitcase, I prepared the final fail-safe. I opened my laptop and printed a single PDF file. It contained the spreadsheet of the $52,000 in expenses, the screenshots of Lindsay's unauthorized access to my email, the police report regarding Derek's trespassing, and the cease and desist letters Elias had sent that morning. I put the documents in a slim leather portfolio. I prayed I would not have to open it. I did not want to be the person waving legal papers at a party, but if they backed me into a corner, if they tried to publicly extort me or lie about my finances to my face, I would not argue. I would simply hand them the file and let the paper cuts bleed them out. I sat on the edge of my bed and composed one final email. I addressed it to Marilyn, Graham, Derek, and Lindsay, effective immediately. I wrote, I have retained Elias Thorne as my legal counsel regarding all matters of financial dispute and defamation. I will not be discussing money, debts, or family obligations tonight. Any attempt to do so will be considered harassment and forwarded to my attorney. I am coming to celebrate the new year. Do not make me celebrate a lawsuit. I hit send. Then, I took the SIM card out of my phone and snapped it in half. I inserted a new prepaid card with a number only Jade and Elias knew. I logged out of all social media apps on my phone. I enabled a privacy screen protector. I was entering hostile territory, and I was going dark. The realization hit me in the taxi on the way to the airport. For years, I had been chasing their validation. I wanted my mother to say she was proud. I wanted my father to say I was smart. I wanted my sister to say I was cool. I had let them bleed me dry financially and emotionally because I thought the payment would eventually buy their respect. But as I watched the rain streak against the window, I realized the truth. I did not need them to believe I was successful. I did not need their applause. I just needed them to stop. I needed to revoke their license to humiliate me. The victory wasn't in their praise. It was in their irrelevance. I landed in Pennsylvania at 6 p.m. The air was biting cold, the kind of damp chill that settles in your bones. I went straight to the hotel, showered, and changed into my gray armor. I applied my makeup with the precision of war paint minimal, sharp, flawless. At 10 o'clock at night, I was in the back of the town car, watching the familiar streets of Weston pass by. My phone buzzed. It was a text from the CNN producer, forwarded by Jade. Schedule update due to breaking news in the Eastern Bloc. We are bumping the Founder Spotlight up. It is not airing at 1 a.m. anymore. It is airing at 11:45 tonight. Primetime. I looked at the clock on the dashboard. It was 10:15. 11:45. That was exactly 15 minutes before midnight. That was the exact window of time Marilyn always reserved for her matriarch's toast, the speech where she traditionally dismantled my self-esteem in front of the captive audience. I stared at the phone, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across my face. Derek and Toby were planning to run a humiliation reel on the projector. Marilyn was planning a verbal assault, and the universe had just decided to schedule my vindication at the exact same moment. Arthur, I said to the driver, can we drive a little slower? I want to walk through those doors at exactly 11 o'clock. You got it, boss, Arthur said. I looked out the window. The pieces were all moving into place. The bomb was not just set. The timer had been accelerated, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of the explosion. I was the one holding the match. The air in the Weston Grand Hall was thick enough to choke on. I sat at table 12, my spine pressed against the back of the chair, my hands folded loosely in my lap. I was the only person at the table not drinking. The glass of champagne in front of me remained untouched, the bubbles slowly dying, much like the conversation of the relatives nearby who were trying very hard not to look at me. They knew what was coming. It was 11:44 at night. Marilyn stood on the stage, the microphone gripped in her hand like a scepter. She was beaming, to the untrained eye. She looked like a matriarch overcome with love for her family. But I knew that look. That was the look of a predator who had cornered its prey and was playing with it before the kill. She had seen me enter. She had seen the gray jumpsuit. She probably thought it was an admission of defeat, a drab uniform for a drab life. She tapped the microphone. The feedback squeal cut through the room. "Family," Marilyn began, her voice dripping with sentimental syrup. "As we count down to another year, we must count our blessings. We must celebrate our triumphs." She gestured to my sister Tara, who preened. "Tara's promotion," she pointed to Derek. "Derek's entrepreneurial spirit." Then, the spotlight of her gaze swung to me. "And we must also have patience for those who are still struggling," she said, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper that carried to the back of the hall. "Our dear Estelle, we are so happy she could afford the ticket to fly home. We know how hard it is in the city when you are still looking for work." She paused. It was a practiced beat. "She is still job hunting. Everyone," Marilyn announced, her voice rising into a bright, artificial laugh. "Another year, another resume." The reaction was immediate and conditioned. Tara let out a loud, sharp cackle. Lindsay giggled behind her hand. Derek slapped the table, and then the rest of the room followed suit. 200 people laughed. It wasn't a warm laugh. It was a wave of social compliance, a collective agreement to kick the person who was already down because it made them feel taller. In the past, I would have shrunk. I would have stared at my shoes. I would have let the shame burn my cheeks crimson. But tonight, I did not move. I did not blink. I lifted my chin and looked directly at Marilyn. Then I slowly turned my head and locked eyes with Aunt Patrice, then Lindsay, then Derek. I held their gazes, one by one, with a cold, blank expression. I wasn't challenging them. I was observing them. I was watching them perform their cruelty like ants in a glass jar. The laughter faltered. It didn't stop, but it became jagged. People shifted in their seats. My refusal to act the victim was disrupting the ritual. They wanted shame, and I was giving them nothing. Marilyn sensed the energy shift. She frowned slightly, her smile wavering. She turned toward the projection screen behind her. She nodded at the tech booth, the signal to Toby, or so she thought, to play the humiliation reel Derek had curated. "We even put together a little slideshow," Marilyn said, recovering her composure. "To remind us all of how much we have grown." She gestured grandly at the screen. Derek smirked at me from across the room, mouthing the words, "Watch this." The screen flickered, the room dimmed, but the image that appeared was not the photo of me crying at my grandmother's funeral. It was not a rejection letter. A crisp, digital chime rang out from the high-fidelity speakers, a sound so distinct, so authoritative, that it silenced the room instantly. It was not the sound of a slideshow. It was the breaking news alert of a major cable network. The giant screen flooded with the red, white, and black graphics of CNN. The timestamp in the corner read, "Live." Marilyn turned around, confused. She tapped the microphone again. "Toby? What is this?" Then the voice of the anchor boomed through the hall, drowning her out. "Tonight, in our special report on the innovation economy, we turn our eyes to the Pacific Northwest." The graphic on the screen shifted. A professional headshot appeared. It was me. But it wasn't the Estelle they knew, the one in the hand-me-down sweaters. It was Estelle Kensington, wearing a black blazer, looking sharp, powerful, and utterly in control. The text beneath my face was massive. Founder Spotlight. Estelle Kensington, CEO of Larkspur Vale. Latest valuation, $20 million. The silence that slammed into the Westin Grand Hall was violent. It was physical. It felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room into the vacuum of their collective shock. 200 jaws went slack. Forks stopped halfway to mouths. Marilyn stood frozen on stage. Her arm was still extended toward the screen, presenting her failure daughter to the room, but the woman on the screen was currently destroying her narrative with every pixel. The segment cut to footage of me walking through the open-plan office of Larkspur Vale. I was pointing at a monitor, directing a team of engineers. I looked authoritative. I looked expensive. Estelle Kensington built Larkspur Vale from a basement project into a logistics giant in less than 3 years, the reporter's voiceover continued. While maintaining a low profile, she secured Series B funding this week, valuing her equity alone at over $8 million. I heard a glass shatter. Someone at table 4 had dropped their drink. No one moved to clean it up. Derek scrambled out of his chair. I watched him run toward the tech booth, his face pale and sweaty. He was pounding on the glass, shouting at Toby to cut the feed. But Toby wasn't moving. I could see Toby inside the booth, arms crossed, watching the screen. He had made his choice. The interview segment began. On screen, I was sitting in a high-back leather chair, opposite the reporter. The lighting was dramatic. "You built this entirely in isolation," the reporter said to the digital version of me. "Why the secrecy? Why not celebrate the milestones with your support system?" On screen, I smiled. It was a sad, knowing smile. I learned very early on that success can be dangerous if you are surrounded by people who view you as a resource, not a person, the on-screen Estelle said. Her voice was calm, reasonable, and devastating. Marilyn lowered the microphone, her hand trembling. She looked from the screen to me, her eyes wide with a horror I had never seen before. It wasn't the horror of tragedy, it was the horror of exposure. "Estelle," she whispered. The microphone caught it. It sounded like a plea, but the video wasn't done. "There is a misconception," the on-screen Estelle continued, "that family is a permanent obligation, but I learned boundaries the hard way. I learned that you have to walk away when people confuse love with entitlement, and sometimes the only way to build something great is to stop paying for the people who are rooting for you to fail." The quote hung in the air. When people confuse love with entitlement, it was a surgical strike. It stripped away every defense Marilyn had. It wasn't just a business success story. It was a public indictment of my family dynamics, broadcast on national television, captioned for clarity, and played at maximum volume in the very room where they had gathered to mock me. The segment ended. The screen faded to the CNN logo. The lights in the hall came back up, harsh and unforgiving. For 3 seconds, nobody breathed. The silence was louder than the laughter had ever been. It was a heavy, suffocating blanket. Then, slowly, heads began to turn. They didn't look at the stage. They didn't look at Marilyn. 200 pairs of eyes pivoted toward table 12. They looked at me. But they weren't looking at the unemployed cousin anymore. They were looking at the CEO. They were looking at the $20 million. And in their eyes, I saw the exact transition I had predicted from mockery to hunger. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I picked up my glass of flat champagne, raised it slightly in Marilyn's direction, and took a sip. Marilyn stood alone on the stage, the slideshow of my failures dead in the water, her job-hunting joke rotting in the air. She looked small. She looked old. And for the first time in my life, she looked absolutely powerless. The silence that followed the broadcast did not last. It was shattered by a collective gasp that sounded like 200 people realizing they were standing on a trapdoor. Then, the dam broke. I did not have to move. They came to me. It started with a ripple of movement from the surrounding tables. People who had spent the last 3 hours avoiding eye contact were suddenly sprinting toward table 12. Aunt Patrice, the woman who had just told me I should work in a mailroom, was the first to reach me. She grabbed my hand, her rings digging into my skin, her eyes wide with a frantic, terrifying adoration. "Estelle!" she shrieked, her voice pitching up 2 octaves. "I knew it. I was just telling Lindsay that you had that spark," I told her. "Estelle is just biding her time." "Oh, honey, $20 million. That is incredible. We are so proud." "You called me sad," I said, my voice calm and low. 10 minutes ago, you said my life was sad." Patrice blinked, her smile faltering for a microsecond before she plastered it back on. "Oh, stop it. You know how we joke. That is just how this family is." Before I could pull my hand away, the circle tightened. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in a decade were patting my back. My Uncle Bob was loudly proclaiming to a waiter that he had taught me how to ride a bike, implying that his bicycle lessons were the foundational pillar of my logistics empire. It was a feeding frenzy. They were not celebrating me. They were retroactively editing their own memories to ensure they were on the winning side of history. And then, the sea parted. Marilyn descended from the stage. She walked through the crowd with the determination of a general reclaiming a lost battalion. She did not look ashamed. She did not look apologetic. She looked triumphant. This was her superpower, the ability to absorb any reality and twist it until it reflected her own glory. She stopped in front of me, tears glistening in her eyes. "Estelle," she breathed, reaching out to cup my face. "My baby, you did it." I leaned back, avoiding her touch. "I did. Didn't I?" "I knew you could," she said, loudly enough for the cameras to hear. "I pushed you so hard because I knew what you were capable of. I had to be tough on you. Estelle, if I had coddled you, you never would have built that company. This is my victory too." It was breathtaking. In 10 seconds, she had transformed her years of emotional abuse into a strategic parenting decision. She wasn't a bully. She was a coach. "Is that what you call it?" I asked. "Coaching. We are a team." Graham appeared at her elbow, nodding vigorously. His eyes were darting around the room, calculating. "And now that the cat is out of the bag, we can finally get things in order. The house needs repairs. Estelle, and your mother and I, well, we are looking at retirement. We can discuss the structure tonight. We will need to set up a family trust." "A trust?" I repeated. "Fair is fair." Derek pushed his way to the front. He looked manic, his eyes red. "You lived in our house. You used our food. You used our internet to build that thing. That is an investment. Estelle, you owe us the opportunity cost. You cannot just take the resources and run off with the profit. That is theft." The circle of relatives nodded. The narrative was shifting again. I wasn't just a success. I was a debtor, and they were the creditors coming to collect. I reached into my clutch. I did not pull out a checkbook. I pulled out my phone. "I expected you to say that," I said. So I prepared a receipt. I opened the family group chat, the one I had been silent in for years. I selected a file. I hit send. Ping. Marilyn's phone in her hand lit up. Ping. Graham's phone buzzed in his pocket. Ping, ping, ping. The sound rippled through the hall as 200 phones received the notification simultaneously. "What is this?" Lindsay asked, looking down at her screen. "Open it," I said. "It is a PDF. It is titled The Ledger." The room went quiet as everyone looked down. "Page 1, I said, my voice projecting clearly without a microphone. "A breakdown of every dollar I have given this family over the last 5 years. $52,481. That covers the phone plans, the streaming services, the emergency loans Derek never paid back, and the credit card bills I paid to keep the lights on in Weston. I didn't use your resources. You used mine." Marilyn's face went pale. She scrolled frantically. "Page 2, I continued. "Screenshots of Lindsay logging into my private email without authorization to steal proprietary business data. That is a felony, by the way. It is called violating the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act." Lindsay gasped and dropped her phone on the table. "Page 3, I said, looking directly at Derek. "The police report from 2 days ago when you tried to kick down my door. And a copy of the restraining order my lawyer filed this morning. If you come within 500 feet of me or my office, you will be arrested." Graham looked up from his phone, his face a mask of fury. "You cannot do this. You cannot air our dirty laundry like this." "I did not air it," I said. "I just documented it. You aired it when you put a microphone in Mom's hand." I stood up. The gray jumpsuit caught the light, making me look like steel. "I did not hide my success because I was ashamed," I told the room. "And I did not hide it because I was greedy. I hid it because I knew that the moment you saw the money, you would stop seeing a daughter and start seeing a bank account. I wanted to be loved for who I was, not what I could buy you, but tonight, you proved that was impossible." "Estelle, stop," Marilyn hissed, grabbing my arm. "You are making a scene. People are watching." "Let them watch," I said, pulling my arm away. "Because this is the last thing they will see of me." I looked at the crowd. "Effective immediately. All financial support is terminated. My lawyers have instructions to file defamation suits against anyone who spreads lies about my company or my character. If you want my money, you can try to take it in court, but I warn you, I have a much better legal team than you do." "You ungrateful little witch," Derek spat, stepping forward with a clenched fist. "Derek." The voice did not come from me. It came from table 4. Aunt Sarah stood up. Sarah, the quiet woman who always brought the potato salad and never said a word. She was trembling, but she was standing. "Sit down, Derek," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "Stay out of this, Sarah," Marilyn snapped. "Estelle is having a breakdown." "No," Sarah said, louder this time. "She is telling the truth. I watched you. Marilyn, I watched you laugh at her tonight. I watched you mock her for 3 years while she paid your phone bill. I just saw the proof on my phone." She looked around the room. "Are we really going to pretend we didn't just laugh at her? We all laughed, and now we want her money. It is disgusting." A murmur went through the crowd. The spell was broken. The united front Marilyn relied on had cracked. Someone else stood up, then another. They weren't all on my side, but they were no longer on hers. They were looking at Marilyn with a mixture of pity and judgment. Marilyn looked around, her eyes wild. She was losing the room. She was losing her audience. I only did what was best," Marilyn stammered. "I am her mother." "You were her mother," I corrected her. "Now, you are just a liability." I checked my watch. The second hand was sweeping toward the 12. "It is almost midnight," I said. "Happy New Year, everyone." I turned my back on them. "Estelle," Graham shouted, "if you walk out that door, do not bother coming back." I didn't break stride. "That is the plan, Dad." I walked through the parted sea of stunned relatives. I walked past the table where my cold dinner sat. I walked past the tech booth where Toby gave me a small, terrified nod. I pushed open the heavy oak doors of the Weston Grand Hall just as the countdown began behind me. 10, 9, 8. The cold air outside hit me like a blessing. It was crisp and clean, washing away the smell of stale perfume and desperation. Arthur was waiting by the curb, the back door of the town car already open. 3, 2, 1. Inside the hall. A muffled cheer went up, hollow and forced. Outside, in the silence of the parking lot, I slid into the leather seat of the car. "Where to, Miss Kensington?" Arthur asked. "The airport, Arthur," I said. "Take me home." My phone buzzed one last time before I tossed the SIM card out the window. It was a text from Jade, coming through on the encrypted app. "Did you survive?" I looked out the window as the car pulled away. Fireworks were exploding over the skyline, painting the darkness in bursts of gold and red. For years, I had watched those fireworks and wished I was someone else, someone richer, someone better, someone they could love. I typed back, "I didn't just survive, I won." I put the phone down and watched the grand hall disappear in the rearview mirror. I felt lighter than I had ever felt in my life. I didn't need their apology. I didn't need their recognition. And most importantly, I didn't need them to know who I was, because for the first time in my life, I knew exactly who I was. I was Estelle Kensington, and I was finally free. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please drop a comment below and share your thoughts on Estelle's decision. If you enjoyed this revenge drama, please make sure to subscribe to the channel Veronica Revenge Stories, hit the like button, and smash that hype button so this story can reach even more people.